Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. This is Madhi from Tampa. Thank you for organizing the global Aradhana celebration. Tampa group would like to offer 3 readings. First, Uma Chandran will be reading from Fragrant Petals, followed by Vijay Ramanathan. She is reading from Gems of Bhagwan. Then Annie Troutman will be offering a reading from Power of the Presence. That will conclude our Tampa offering. Namo Ramana.
I'm Uma Chandran. I live in Tampa. I'm reading from Fragrant Petals, a representative anthology on Sri Ramana Maharshi. It is said that the Supreme Being is beyond thought and speech. It is our good fortune that the Supreme Being assumed a human form and came down as Bhagavan Sri Ramana and allowed us to love him and praise him. He opened the floodgates of grace to anyone who came to him, and he is still there, waiting for us patiently, and it is we who make him wait. The sorrows of the distressed who gave themselves unto him, the doubts of earnest seekers, the disbelief of the skeptics who came to test him, vanished in the mere presence of Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi. His sacred abode conferred peace and showed man the true path. It does so still. This anthology is a small collection of articles written by those who basked in the sunshine of his boundless grace. This is Fragrant Petals, a representative anthology on Sri Ramana Maharshi. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya by Swami Rajeshwarananda. Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi was the personification of emancipation, the source of supreme peace, and the boundless ocean of freedom. He was indeed the riddle of all life on earth. His solemn presence lifted us beyond our body and mind to our true self. This truth of self-realization in his holy presence was as if coursing through our veins, pulsating in our bosom, tingling with every drop of blood, and becoming consonant with our very heartbeats. His words make us even today rest on the glory of ourself, the infinite, the eternal, and the deathless. His silent and sacred look imparted self-knowledge that became a part and parcel of our constitution and the very vitality of our life. Bhagavan Sri Ramana was the ideal of the human race. He was the wonder of the world with the perfume of spiritual peace. He was the secret of many masterminds. His life is a study in divine illumination based on dynamic silence. All worries and wounds of the world simply melted in his presence like ice before fire. His was a discovery of a lost technique in divine awareness, a gift to humanity. He touches life at all levels. No school of philosophy, cult, creed, yoga, and the like could claim him, as he did not fit easily into any ready-made classification. He lived free and remained free, and let everyone remain free likewise. A sage, a philosopher, a recluse, an incarnation of God, all these terms do not adequately describe him. All these fall flat since he transcends them. He was not the present-day product of some past tradition. No guru, spiritual guide, or sastras, scriptures, made him great or illumined him. He was unique in remaining true to himself and being himself. His traditional knowledge in sastras and bhashyas came to him after his self-realization. He was in himself the quest and the find. He set before us as the glory and goal of life the realization of the full divine consciousness of ourself. The self is not something to be created or attained, but which is fully aware of itself, with an awareness that can neither begin nor end, as it is eternal. He proclaimed the Absolute as the Self, I am in each individual life, ever being itself. Such a realization endows everyone ultimately with pure consciousness, a state of impersonality, timelessness, spacelessness, causelessness, freedom, and peace. He was himself a testimony for such an august revelation that always stands at the very doorstep of one and all. Thus, the heart of our being is the heart of the universe. It is there that illusions and dreams, confusions and contradictions take to flight, and illumination floods in with the kindly light in one's life, be the individual black or brown, white or yellow. His was the cure-all that restores the human race to its lost heritage and happiness, bereft of social, political, and economic diseases of the present day, together with their 101 ghosts. The remedy for all such troubles that divide man from man, class from class, nation from nation, that spring like weeds into new growths, lies in awakening the spiritual consciousness of their nature which unites them. No society or country can endure without a spiritual basis, a moral basis, a recognition of the value of fellowship, brotherhood, and neighborhood. Such a sublime atmosphere of the higher life ends all troubles, frictions, hatreds, and discords automatically. Bhagavan Sri Ramana stands for the unity of existence, the non-duality of the Godhead, and the harmony of religion. He expresses selfhood, including and transcending the brotherhood of man and fatherhood of God in the family of humanity. He shines as the sun of wisdom in the firmament of the self, radiating serenity, sublimity, and solemnity. His teachings are refreshingly plain and powerful. They throw open the floodgates of the soul and make the living waters of the higher consciousness rush forth. His gospel, free from any dogma or doctrine, is not hampered by fossilized traditions. It is as broad as the sky, as deep as the sea, and as universal as the rays of the sun. He awakens in every one of us the dormant divinity, the potential power, the primary principle, which is at the back of the flow and flicker of finite phenomena. Even a single word from Bhagavan's holy lips was enough to enable us to carry it all through our life, to stir the soul and awaken it to its intrinsic immortality and infinity, whereas splendid orations from persons without divine wisdom, shouted from platforms, fall flat on our ears and fail to bring about any effect at all. Bhagavan's sacred and solid silence spoke louder than words at times, and his solemn and sublime look was vividly significant at all times. He has also had several occasions of prolonged and continuous stay at Bhagavan's lotus feet for months together. He feels from the bottom of his heart highly fortunate to claim that he is mere dust of the holy feet of our beloved Bhagavan. It is the greatest privilege of the rider that he has been blessed with the rare opportunity of having been in contact with Bhagavan Sri Ramana for 46 years and more. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramana.
Gems from Bhagavan. 1. Happiness. All beings desire happiness always, happiness without a tinge of sorrow. At the same time, everybody loves himself best. The cause for love is only happiness, so that happiness must lie in one. Further, that happiness is daily experienced by everyone in sleep when there is no mind. To attain that natural happiness, one must know oneself. For that, self-enquiry, who am I, is the chief means. 2. The self and non-self. The self and the appearances therein, as the snake in the rope, can be well illustrated like this. There is a screen. On that screen first appears the figure of a king. He sits on a throne. Then, before him, on that same screen, a play begins with various figures and objects, and the king on the screen watches the play on the same screen. The seer and the seen are mere shadows on the screen, which is the only reality supporting all the pictures. In the world also, the seer and the seen together constitute the mind, and the mind is supported by or based on the self. Questions about the reality of the world and about the existence of pain or evil in the world will all cease when you inquire, who am I? And find out the seer. Without a seer, the world and the evils thereof alleged do not exist. The world is the form of the 5 categories of sense objects and nothing else. These 5 kinds of objects are sensed by the 5 senses. As all are perceived to the mind through these 5 senses, the world is nothing but the mind. Is there a world apart from the mind? If the mind, the source of all knowledge and activity, subsides, the vision of the world will cease, just as knowledge of the real rope does not dawn till the fancied notion of the serpent disappears. Vision, experience of the reality cannot be gained unless the superimposed vision of the universe is abandoned. That which really exists is only the self. The world, Jiva, individual self, and Ishvara, God, are mental creations like the appearance of the pearl in the oyster. All these appear at the same time and disappear similarly. The self alone is the world, the ego, and Ishvara. 3. Mind. Mind is a wonderful force inherent in the self. That which rises in this body as I is the mind. When the subtle mind emerges through the brain and the senses, the gross names and forms are cognized, when it remains in the heart, names and forms disappear. If the mind remains in the heart, the I or the ego, which is the source of all thoughts, will go, and the self, the real, eternal I, alone will shine. When there is not the slightest trace of the ego, there is the self. There is no other way of controlling the mind except as prescribed in the books like the Gita, drawing in the mind as often as it strays or goes outward and fixing it in the self. Of course, it will not be easy to do it. It will come only with practice or sadhana. God illumines the mind and shines within it. One cannot know God by means of the mind. One can but turn the mind inwards and merge it in God. 4. Who am I? Inquiry. Thoughts alone constitute the mind, and for all thoughts, the base or source is the I thought. I is the mind. If we go inward, questing for the source of the I topples down. This is the Jnana inquiry. Where the I merges, another entity emerges as I of its own accord. That is the perfect self. There is no use removing doubts. If we clear one doubt, another arises, and there will be no end to the doubts. All doubts will cease only when the doubter and his source have been found. Seek for the source of the doubter, and you find he is really non-existent. Doubter ceasing, doubts will cease. It is no doubt said in some books that one should go on cultivating one good quality after another and thus prepare for moksha. But for those who follow the Jnana or Vichara Marga, their sadhana is itself quite enough for acquiring all Devic qualities. They need not do anything else. 5. Surrender. To a devotee who was praying she should have more frequent visions of Shiva, Bhagavan said, surrender to him and abide by his will, whether he appears or disappears. Avoid his pleasure. If you ask him to do as you like it, it is not surrender but command to God. You cannot have him obey you and yet think you have surrendered. He knows what is best and when and how to do it. His is the burden. You have no longer any cares. All your cares are his. Such is surrender. That is bhakti. 7. Grace and Guru. Contact with jnanis is good. They will work through silence. A guru is not the physical form. Hence, his contact remains even after the physical form of the guru vanishes. One can go to another guru after one's guru passes away. But after all, gurus are one, as none of them is the form. Always mental contact is the best. Satsang means association with Sat or reality. One who knows or has realized Sat is also regarded as Sat. Such association is absolutely necessary for all. Shankara has said, in all the three worlds, there is no boat like Satsang to carry one safely across the ocean of births and deaths. 8. Self-realization. It is false to speak of realization. What is there to realize it? The real is as it is ever. How to realize it? All that is required is this. We have realized the unreal. That is regarded as real what is unreal. We have to give up this attitude. That is all that is required for us to attain jnana. We are not creating anything new or achieving something which we did not have before. The illustration given in the books is this. We dig a well and create a huge pit. The akasa in the pit or well has not been created by us. We have just removed the earth which was filling the akasa there. The akasa was there then and is also there now. Similarly, we have simply to throw out all the age-long samskaras, innate tendencies which are inside us. When all of them have been given up, the self will shine alone. Effortless and choiceless awareness is our real state. If we can attain it or be in it, it is all right. But one cannot reach it without effort, the effort of deliberate meditation. All the age-long vasanas, impressions, carry the mind outwards and turn it to external objects. All such thoughts have to be given up and the mind turned inward. For that, effort is necessary for most people. Of course, every book says, be quiet or still. But it is not easy. That is why all this effort is necessary. Even if you find one who has at once achieved the mauna, silence, or supreme state indicated, you may take it that the effort necessary has already been completed in a previous life. Such effortless and choiceless awareness is reached only after deliberate meditation. You may go on reading any number of books on Vedanta. They can only tell you, realize the self. The self cannot be found in books. You have to find it for yourself. The whole of Vedanta is contained in the two biblical statements, I am that I am, and be still, and know that I am God.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Hello, my name is Annie, and I am a devotee from Tampa, Florida. Today I would like to offer Kundu Swami's account of a devotee named Sundaramal. I'm taking this from The Power of the Presence, Part 2 by David Godman. Sundaramal was tall and majestic, the daughter of a lawyer from Tiruvannamalai, which is near Madras. Sadhus often came to her house, and even as a child she welcomed them. Once, a wandering monk, inspired by her devotion, taught her how to meditate between the eyebrows. This she practiced with great enthusiasm and could sit for a long time, lost in contemplation. When she grew up, her family married her to a man in Madras, but whenever she went to her husband's house, she would start to develop a severe headache that would not respond to any treatment. When she went back to her father's house, the headaches would stop. They would only recur when she tried to re-enter the front door of her husband's house. Now, her husband was a very understanding man. He sympathized with her plight and allowed her to stay permanently in her father's house. It was clearly not her destiny to live a normal married life. Soon afterwards, she entered a new phase of her spiritual growth when she found that the headaches occurred whenever she was not absorbed in meditation. Initially, it was only the married life that gave her a headache. Now, everything in the world that was not connected with meditation brought on the same physical pain. The pain of normal consciousness, coupled with the desire for a contemplative life, drove her to the point where she meditated all day. After a few years, she heard of Sri Bhagavan. She came to see him and found immediate peace and relief in his presence. Initially, she stayed with Ekkamal, but later on she lived on the hill alone as a sadhu. As her hair became long and matted, she acquired the name Jatini. Jatini means a woman with matted locks. Though she lived some distance from the ashram, she came every day to have Sri Bhagavan's darshan. On one occasion, she fasted for 21 days and ended it by offering a bhiksha to Sri Bhagavan and the devotees. Afterwards, at her request, all of us, including Sri Bhagavan, went on a giri pradakshina with her. On the way round, Sudaramal described in detail her spiritual practices and the problems she was facing. She sought Sri Bhagavan's guidance for furthering her sadhana. By way of an answer, Sri Bhagavan asked me to tell her the story of Queen Chudala. This is the story that appears in Yoga Vasishta. I told it in great detail and with enthusiasm. Many people were shy in the presence of Sri Bhagavan. They would stammer and stutter when they had to talk to him. I was never like that. I never felt uneasy if I had to speak in front of him. Like a child that displays its ability with enthusiasm and confidence when it's in front of its beloved mother, I always used to be happy and confident while reading stotras or talking about spiritual matters in front of Sri Bhagavan. This is how I told the story. King Sikadvaj and Queen Chudala ruled the kingdom of Malava. Chudala regularly practiced meditation in the silent hours of the night. In due course, she realized the self, as a result of which her face shone brightly and she became much more beautiful than before. The king noticed this and asked the reason. The queen replied that it was due to her self-realization. The king laughed at her, thinking that realization was only possible through severe austerities and could never be gained while living in a palace. He himself had religious inclinations and wanted to leave the kingdom to practice tapas in the forest so he could gain self-realization. The queen tried to dissuade him and suggested that he could carry on the tapas in the palace itself and rule the kingdom as well. Refusing to act on her advice, he went to the forest and performed hard penance. The queen ruled the kingdom in the king's absence. The queen took pity on her husband. Being anxious to rescue him from the mire of delusion, she practiced siddhis and took a guise of a rishi called Kumbha Muni. She then materialized before him a few feet off the ground. The king, thinking that some celestial being had descended from the heavens to bless him, fell at his feet, told him his woes, and sought guidance. The Muni gave the king the following advice. Karmas can give fruit as ordained by the Lord, but karmas themselves cannot grant you liberation. By doing disinterested actions, one's mind can become pure. Then, with the pure mind, one should contemplate the self. This will destroy the vasanas. Next, one should approach a master and through his grace learn how to inquire into the nature of the self. Liberation is possible only through inquiry and not by performing any amount of karma. It is by renouncing everything one can realize the truth. The king said that he had already renounced everything, including his kingdom and family. Kumbha Muni told him that his renunciation was only external and that the seeds of attachment were still latent in him. The king then took his walking staff, his water pot, his rudraksha beads, and his clothes, throwing them all into the fire. He stood naked without any possessions. On being told that he had still not renounced completely, the king was ready to drop his last possession, his body, by jumping from the top of a mountain. Then Muni asked him, "What harm has the body done to deserve such punishment?" By giving this answer, Muni taught him that he could not realize the truth by destroying the body, but only by destroying the mind that was the source of all attachments. The mind itself identifies as I, and this is bondage. The snapping of this identification is the renunciation of everything. Having got this far with his instructions, the Muni described then in detail the sadhana of discrimination. After hearing all these words, the king's doubts were dispelled and his mind became pure. The king took the advice to heart, inquiring into the source of self, soon became one with it and remained in a blissful samadhi. Kumbha Muni disappeared and returned some time later, but the king was still in samadhi. Chudala roared like a lion to wake him up, but could not bring him out of his samadhi state. So, taking a more subtle form, she entered the king's heart and found it pure and devoid of any latent tendencies. In a melodious voice, she began to chant the Samaveda. Like the blossoming of a lotus, the king suddenly became aware of the world. Filled with joy, he remained silent, finding no words to express his gratitude. Then, as advised by the queen, he returned with her to the kingdom. Fully established in the truth, he ruled the kingdom with the queen for many years. Sri Bhagavan was pleased with my narration. At its conclusion, he said appreciatively, "Not bad. He narrates in such a way that it can be understood very well." As for Jatini Sundarama, she had listened to my story with rapt attention. It had a profound effect on her, and she left Arunachala soon afterwards. I had no doubt that the story and Sri Bhagavan's grace fully established her in the self. What else could happen, since Sri Bhagavan chose such a powerful story to be told to her? Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.